A Love Story by Anonymous. Once upon a time, in a country far, far away, there lived a man named Will and a lady named Rosemary. Will had been born in a rich but unhappy family. His parents were always shrieking, swearing, and crying. There was a lot of hurling of furniture, slamming the door, and storming out. His mum and dad had unlimited appetites and were never satisfied. They shopped or boasted all day, so they could shop and boast again the next day about buying things that they did not need or value. Amassing these things only made them feel empty. It was all a raucous rhodomontade of a screaming match with alcohol poured on top. The parents thought they were royalty, but behaved like chavs. Their family moved every single year, and his whole life was thrown into complete chaos. Therefore Will had no friends, and his parents always made him the odd one out. He could not do anything right for them. Everything he did was wrong. His sisters fought like cat and dog. In the end, his sisters would not even speak to each other. Will had an excellent education. The problem was that he ended up clever but unwise. He had been foolish. Will had made the wrong decision every single time. Bad choices had led to bad outcomes. He had become poor and then ended up doing boring, stressful jobs he disliked. He had had girlfriends, but he'd been naive. Someone had tricked him, and others had not treated him with enough respect. He felt that he was cursed by the god of mediocre girlfriends. He was foredoomed to mess up everything. His tiny flat was untidy, and he wore tatty, faded, unfashionable old clothes. He did not make much money in his job as a bicycle delivery boy. Everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. He'd had a child with Miss Evil. He had taken pity on Miss Evil and moved to Poverty Land to save her. He had spent every penny on her, but Miss Evil had torn his baby away from him. He'd wasted the best years of his youth on someone who'd so coldly and so cruelly betrayed him again and again. The accursed woman had caused him an infinitude of grief. He was deeply wounded, and he thought that he would never recover. It seemed that he would never achieve his heart's desire. He was well into adulthood, and he feared that no one would ever love him. He was an incurable romantic. His friends told him he was being silly with his adolescent fantasy of true love. They said that life is not a fairy tale. People scorned him as a cloud dweller. He was a penniless writer, and he had to take another job to make ends meet. This daydreamer could never achieve anything. Rosemary had been born into an ordinary family. They did not have much money, but they were rich in love and happiness. She had younger siblings and helped to look after them. She was very responsible. Her parents were sensible and kind. She was a hard-working and clever girl in school. When she grew up, she became the professor of braininess. She also won an Olympic gold medal in jogging. She was a domestic goddess and kept winning MasterChef. She broke the world record for house tidying. Everyone idolized Rosemary. She was the muse of every poet and the painter on the globe. She was tall, slender, elegant, and blessed with matchless beauty beyond compare. The dictionary did not have enough words, and perpetuity did not have enough time to extol her. She was so beautiful because she had never smoked a cigarette. She ate healthy food, and just the right amount of it, as well as taking ample exercise. Hers was a face that had never told a lie. This comely lady was witty and a fantastic conversationalist. a lively circle of female friends, but somehow men were afraid to approach Rosemary. She'd had her share of boyfriends at school and university, but when she was a real adult, she had no more. The men she met all seemed inadequate or uninterested, but Rosemary was lucky enough to have the two best children in the world. She was only ever cross with them when it was absolutely necessary. She liked nothing more than nurturing. She'd won the Mum of the Year award 3 times. Her house rebounded to the rompings of her sturdy children. Rosemary was as generous-spirited and warm-hearted as can be. She thought she was happy enough, but not quite content. Perhaps she did not need a man after all. She had been warned. Men only ever bring trouble. The only male in her life was her cat. Rosemary was hard on herself. She criticized her body because she looked like a human being and not a photoshopped and airbrushed image in a magazine. She did not even like her legs because they were real. One day, Will was sitting in an Italian restaurant. In walked God's masterpiece. She was a leggy lady, clothed in a diaphanous scarlet dress. Her long legs were toned and tanned. She was lithe, svelte, and gracile. Her pale complexion was bathed in the radiance of both the sun and of the moon. Her glossy auburn tresses tapered down to her delicate elbows. Her fine-boned face was framed with perfectly proportioned, fragile features. Her smile could illuminate a black hole. She tottered in slowly on high heels. She was Rosemary. She bit her lower lip, feeling a little anxious. Around her neck she wore white lustrous pearls. Her rose lips were but lightly made up. She was the living spirit of femininity. Will's eyes met Rosemary's. He looked into those sparkling emerald eyes and saw the serenity of her smile. She inquired into his intelligent, iridescent eyes. Instantly, a curious connection was formed. Rosemary perceived a mysterious bond between them. She knew that it was written in stars. Will's mouth fell agape. His head was aswim, and his heart was leaping. He looked the lady up and down. She felt herself melt. Her heart was aglow. The angel of love had drawn back her bow and fired a flaming arrow deep into Will's heart. Will stood up and walked slowly, oh so slowly, towards Rosemary. She gazed at him in bewildered awe. He was dumbstruck by her exquisiteness. But it was not only her unutterable and boundless beauty that stole his heart away. He saw her face, her smile so serene that it could calm a hurricane. He breathed deeply of the heady fragrance that she was wearing, but she seemed just unattainable. Would someone like her see anything in him? Rosemary studied Will closely. He was tall and broad-shouldered. Will was a little chubby, but she did not mind that overmuch. He had warm brown hair down to his eyebrows. His rectangular face was regular but distinguished. He had a slightly broad nose and a naturally smiley face. She knew instinctively that he was a man who could never, ever hurt her. To her, he was impossibly attractive. Will stopped an inch from her, but Rosemary put out her hands and drew him towards her. Their lips met in the most soulful kiss of all time. Somehow, they just knew it was meant to be. At the creation of the universe, all the souls were paired up. A perfect person is created for everyone. Finding that perfect person is your life's quest. But some people search to the uttermost ends of the universe and never, ever find him or her. But Will knew in a split second that Rosemary was his destiny. Rosemary and Will finally disengaged. They held hands and walked to a table. They had a little luncheon, but did not manage to take their eyes off each other. They wanted to devour each other. They scarcely ate a morsel. Will was awestruck by her prettiness, the brilliancy of her mind, and the geniality of her character, as well as her élan vital. His voice was a puckered, dulcet tenor's tone. Her voice was like a lilting violin. Rosemary had a soft and gentle personality. She was unpretentious, but as gracious as a princess. When luncheon was over, they exchanged but one chaste kiss, and had to go their separate ways for the day. But before they did, Will confessed, with a catch in his voice, "I love you." The words pierced Rosemary's heart. She was momentarily dazed. A lump rose in her throat, and lacrimations welled in her innocent, heavenly eyes, and she heard herself whisper in her velvet voice, "I love you too." Never a truer word was spoken. He felt that Rosemary's name was engraven on his heart. Will was a complete coward, but he knew that he would gladly pour out every last drop of his life's blood to save Rosemary. When they next met, it was not just Rosemary wanted to be with Will, she had to be. Mother Nature herself commanded Rosemary to unite with Will. Rosemary gave herself completely to the one whom she loved. She was soaked to the skin in emotion. She had magically healed Will's broken heart. But they met again and again. They were falling truly, madly, and deeply in love. They knew that their love was absolute insanity, but they never wanted it to end. Will warned her that he was a pauper and a loser who had nothing to offer but problems and impossible ambitions. Rosemary loved him despite his many shortcomings. He proclaimed her the very summit of absolute perfection. They communicated by a strange telepathy and could complete each other's sentences. Will and Rosemary knew that they were born for each other. The goddess of love had cast a spell of romance over the couple. There has never been and never shall be a love so pure, so tender, so sweet, and so sublime. For Will it seemed that Rosemary could make all problems and worries disappear. She was the panacea for every ill. She could take the pain away. He clung to her as though she was a life raft when he was shipwrecked on a tempest-tossed ocean. Sometimes, under the covers, they like to imagine that they're the only two people in the whole universe. She was ineffably elated to be with him. They were both addicted to the most potent substance in the world, love. When Rosemary and Will were apart, each one felt like he or she was missing a limb. They spoke for hours and hours on the phone. One had what the other needed. Will taught her to swim, and she taught him to sing. He canticled her praises every morn and every night. When the two were together, they sometimes chatted all day long. At other times, they would look wistfully at each other and enjoy a wordless conversation. Their loves were far better than in any film and far beyond their wildest fantasies. Rosemary had never felt so wild and free. Their emotions were so extravagant that the two found it exhausting. In the darkest depths of a stilly midnight, the true loves lay very, very close together, and a miracle happened. They were engulfed by tidal wave after tidal wave of love washing over them. It felt frighteningly good, a tsunami of the most indescribable pleasure exploded inside them. They heard the strings of a symphony orchestra play a melodious euphony for them. The choir of all the angels in heaven rejoiced for their love. Will bellowed like a bull, and Rosemary ululated like a nightingale. The two loved each other so much that a tiny baby started to grow deep inside of Rosemary's inmost parts. As the baby grew, so did the love of Rosemary for Will, and the love of Will for Rosemary. Rosemary felt that she was finally blossoming with the pregnancy. With every day of the pregnancy, she became younger and healthier. She was as big as a whale, but she had never felt so adored or beautiful in all her days. Will and Rosemary were elated to know the baby burgeoning in her womb was the flesh and blood of both of them. The baby was jumping for joy in Rosemary's belly. The baby was so eager to join the family that she was trying to kick her way out. Will met Rosemary's children. They instantly liked him because of his bottomless repertoire of jokes, stories, and animal noises. Will had finally found acceptance. Rosemary had finally found someone who treasured her as she deserved. They were soaring and twining in deathless love. The two were enraptured in celestial bliss. Will and Rosemary could cuddle each other for all eternity. They felt narcotized with love, as though they were floating on an infinite azure ocean of eternal ecstasy. After a few months, the bouncing baby was born, and Will held Rosemary's manicured hand. They named her Eva. Everyone was overjoyed that this most precious gift had been bestowed on the family. Rosemary's other children did not feel jealous. They knew that love is only ever multiplied and never divided. Then Miss Evil saw sense because of what Rosemary said to her. Miss Evil gave Will back to his son Gonji. Gonji came to live with Rosemary, Will, and the girls. Gonji was welcomed into the bosom of the family. Will finally had the happy family that he'd always wanted. Rosemary finally had someone who loved her for who she was and was not intimidated by her astounding accomplishments, nor believed that gold outweighs a heart. The limerence that Will and Rosemary felt for each other enmeshed their hearts together forever. They cleaved to each other as two wax candles melted into one. Then the family got a little beige dog called Bella. The family was flooded with an elixir of love so vast and rich and deep that it would never run out. They all lived together happily ever after.